Welcome to the speaker module 2. Hello everyone and welcome to, once again, TEDx Boot Camp and training for top level speakers. I got a little bit of background noise, but this is Tammy Kling and I'm here with Bruce Pulver this evening. Hi everyone, I can see Melissa, hello, one of our top coaches. She's amazing. Melissa has an amazing goal to be a TEDx speaker. Melissa, I can only see your thumb. There we go. I see her. Wow, you look fantastic. Bruce, can you hear us?
I can hear everyone fine. So thumbs up if you can hear us. It would be great. Good. Hey, Ellen. Hello.
Can you give us a participant view so we can just have everyone on view before we don't see everyone, before cameras and mics are shut off? There we go. I want to get a good picture of you guys and see you guys. Hey, Ephraim, hi. Okay, now, don't you be driving and zooming, so. Okay, I love it. Okay, so do you want to open mics so we can just all say hello before we begin?
Yeah, if you're on mute, go ahead and come off. You should be able to do that, or I can unmute folks. So let me, there we go. Looks like Melissa asked to unmute. There we go. And then Melissa, I think I just muted you. Sorry. There you go. There we are.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
It's so great to see everyone. It's so fantastic. It's really different seeing people on camera than it is seeing everybody on Facebook, right? Hi, Ellen. How are you? I do that same thing. I always think my hair never looks good enough, and I'm always messing with it. It doesn't matter who I'm zooming with. I'm always messing with my hair, you know.
It's
I try
gorgeous.
not to.
Leave it alone. It's beautiful.
For some reason, when you're doing like media or television, you can just sit there because there's cameras in front of you and a cameraman. But when you're on Zoom, it's just you and your camera. So you want to fix everything, you know, and I find myself doing this. I don't know. I'm a bad Zoomer, but
I hear you. It's terrible.
yeah. But this is fun and we're going to grow each week. So we're going to give you some really interesting thoughts, and we're going to really do the best we can to laser focus on the topic this week. And so our microphones, including mine, until I speak, will be turned off, and we'll be able to talk on text, but also in a group this week. So we're going to let Bruce open us up right now. And Bruce, open us up with our topic today at TEDx Boot Camp 2022.
Yeah, so welcome to our next session. It's exciting to see everybody here. And today we're gonna spend some time around sort of the preparation, right, Tammy? We're gonna talk about, you know, the audition. We're gonna talk about topic. We're gonna talk about length of talk, even things like what maybe to wear, right, Tammy? So that's really, I think, where we're gonna take it from here today. What did I miss? Add what I missed.
It's perfect. Today in this course, we're really focusing on things that we've learned not only over the last 5-6 years, but over the last decade. And some of them might surprise you. So when I sat down to pick people for TEDx, meaning, you know, the judges, to coach the judges on what we were looking for, because every TEDx host and licensee is different. I was really looking for people that We're authentic world changers. So you'll always have Bruce and I talk about whatever talk you give, make sure it's authentic to you. It doesn't matter if you're talking about astronomy or NASA or how to build a treehouse. You can make that exciting if you're passionate about it, but it has to be authentic. And so as you go through really creating your bio and any speaking engagement, our goal is to get you set up on the foundation. And one of the key things you'll always hear me say is that it is harder for a world-class speaker. It would be harder for one of the top 3 speakers in the world to get a TEDx with us anyways, than it would be someone that's just authentic, because speakers tend to have a mission, right? And as you know, speakers are used to getting paid. So when a speaker comes on stage, usually it's very polished and it almost comes off like a sales presentation, because sales and marketing people are very good at being speakers on stage and getting hired by corporations. But a TEDx, it's important to note that the distinction is that it's ideas worth sharing. So we really want ideas that are going to be powerful and change lives. And first thing we want to talk about is really, there's a rule that I want you to break, and it's a TEDx rule as well. Most TEDx rules you can't break, but when I was delivering my talk before I became a judge, I did my own TED Talk. And when I was delivering my talk, someone said, don't wear black. Whatever you do, don't wear black. And if you're good at sales and marketing, again, you're going to be really good at understanding what the consumer wants. And if you're not, that's why brainstorming sessions like this are great. Iron sharpens iron. But I wore black because I thought to myself, you know, every time we coach authors or speakers, we want their books, their speeches, whether it's a TED Talk or I Am Second or something else, we want them to be timeless. So for instance, if you write a book, we want you to be able to be interviewed 10 years from now on National Geographic or Dateline NBC or whatever, and have it be timeless. So there's a few ways to do that. Well, if you look at TED Talks, a lot of times people, you can tell if they did the talk a long time ago by what they're wearing. So I would encourage you, if you feel comfortable in a certain color, like black, even if they tell you don't wear black because you'll blend into the background, wear black because it's timeless. Whatever you feel comfortable in, wear, but just make sure that you could envision that 10 years from now, because
that's good.
Yes, and it's really important, because right now you could go look at my TEDx, which I don't recommend you go look at because we have a million more better speakers, more better speakers on the TEDx stage. But if you look at what I was wearing, it will be relevant 5 years from now, probably. Whereas I would be tempted to wear something now that's trendy. And again, the issue with wearing something trendy is it won't be timeless. And so, you know, the 70s bell bottoms might be really hip, but if you wear them now, you're going to be out of fashion. And it's really critical, because look at Bruce as a perfect example. And this is what we coached all our TEDx speakers through. If, you know, Bruce did his TEDx and now he's able to send that to corporations for speaking engagements. He doesn't have to have a speaker reel. I mean, they're like, dang, this guy did a TEDx, right? So he's credible. It's instant credibility. And so I just wanted to bring that up, is break that rule Don't wear black. They'll tell you that when you go for usually any audition or any speaker audition. They will say wear solids, not stripes. That I agree with. Okay, because I don't like stripes anyways, but I don't like patterns anyways. But they will tell you wear solids, and they'll tell you don't wear black, and I don't agree with that because black is timeless. So Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about what did you wear and why? Because this is important. This isn't fluff. This is critical. And the reason is I want everybody to be able to send your talk out to a television station, to a producer, to HR, to a CEO, to a nonprofit organization or a church or whoever you're targeting. And so we have to focus on being smart and timeless and fighting that urge to really, dress like we want to, if that makes sense. So Bruce, let us know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I wore a blazer, some black slacks, and a white button-down shirt. So I mean, that's a guy thing, right? So I cannot speak to the lady fashion. I can just say from a guy perspective. And I was coached on that. And one of the things that stuck in my head about it is that whenever you look at framed pictures, black and white, look at Frank Sinatra, black and white, right? Look at any athlete, black and white. The timelessness of those photographs where they're taken, they stand the time of everything. And that has really helped me. Now, there's never been any time where I felt like, wow, that shirt didn't go. It was just a white starched button down shirt. Now, had I thought about some other things? Yes. Would a white t-shirt over that been trendy and been okay? Probably, but probably wouldn't have fit all the settings. So it wasn't like being overdressed. It wasn't in a tuxedo, but it was in something that was comfortably formal enough, but comfortable enough, I felt. And the other part was, for whatever this is worth, I felt comfortable in it. And I think that's important as well, because you're bringing your whole self to the stage, whether it's a TED or any other kind of talk. So I do believe it needs to be something that you can be it's an extension of who you are. So when I got up there, I felt like, yeah, I like this jacket. I like it, so I had that, it had almost an implicit confidence, Tammy. I'll turn that back to you.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a really critical tip that people save for the last minute. They always want to get their talk down, especially really good speakers. They save that for the last minute. So for instance, I'm coaching someone that is one of the top 3 speakers in the world on Wednesday. And I'm agenting him at a live meeting. He just got offered like 1.7 million to do 77 speaking engagements. I don't know how much that is, if you do the math, but he doesn't want to do 77 speaking engagements, right? And so he wants me to help him out. Well, speakers like that are great on the road, but when you tell them not to dress a certain way for something as big as a TEDx, for instance, they can't get out of what they normally do in their comfort zone. So this is really critical, especially for that timeless factor, because the number one problem that I know I have when I'm trying to even place a speaker is that dated look, and that's why we're covering things like updating your bio. Even if you're a speaker already, it's really critical. And if you look at any, like go out and look at any speakers bureau or speakers, even photos on their website, and generally it's something that was taken 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe. And even the videos can be dated. So everything we're doing is kind of like little tricks that will help you really leverage your speaking engagements, and specifically if you get a TED Talk, really leverage that. Also, if you think about audition, everything is so subjective that you really don't want to alienate someone who doesn't like a certain style or color. So you kind of have to always be thinking about the audience. And we had a great question. And Ellen said, have you ever had anyone open up their talk with a poem? I love that idea. I think it's very powerful. And I think that if you did it the right way, it would be really wonderful. Personally, I did something like that when I was on Geraldo show. Geraldo Rivera was a talk show host, had a show, and he opened one of my books and he read a poem that I had written and I had used in the book. And it was a poem I had written as a child, which was really neat to be having him read that on national television. And I loved that. And I would definitely suggest doing something creative like that, opening with a poem or spoken word or something like that, if it's super powerful. I did hear one talk on racism with a speaker once, and she opened with a spoken word poem about what she saw from a racial point of view. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. I think so. So Ellen, to your point, there's about, I think, 10 seconds that you have in any talk, and definitely, I believe in a TED, to gather and capture and harness the attention of your audience. And so starting with something as like that, a poem, or you're never going to believe what happened, or some sort of bold statement, as opposed to thank you. And this is even a public speaking engagement. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here today. Boom, you lost them. They're on their phone. You know, you're not going to believe what happened. Or just start with something. I often start a talk when I talk about the power of words. I talk about, and I often open and I say, she never gave up. And then I just pause. And people are like, well, what does that mean? And then I can build around that the story about what I'm going to chat about. So it's almost a not a controversial statement, while it can be, but it's one that's a stake in the ground. And spoken word, a poem, a message, a statement like that can, I think, really just capture. Then you've got them. That once you've got them, then obviously it's your responsibility to keep them. But if you lose them in the first 15 seconds, man, you can't get them back.
Yes, I really love being creative. I love creativity. Two things I want to mention here. Number one, I look at the world in a deconstructive way. So I think we have done normal for a long time. And I think that everyone thinks within the confines of structure. Even when it comes to books and publishing, I really try to tell people one of the best-selling books on the planet was A Million Little Pieces, a book with no punctuation, written by a drug addict. And it starts with him in a mental health facility. And it was just authentically, a great book. Nobody can do that. I've still never had anyone who can do that. They say, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Well, that's a deconstructed way of writing a book, which I think that it's authentic to do a poem like Ellen, you said, and I don't know, can you unmute Ellen? Because she said that she's considering writing a talk that will be a poem about abuse. And I love that. It's like spoken word, right? And I love that idea. And I think that is when you're doing it authentically and not just trying to be cute, then and I'll give you an example what I mean. We did have someone on our stage once who I coached her against doing this, but she was talking about farming, and she wore an outfit that made her just a farmer, overalls and rain boots. And I felt like it was too much. It kind of, I don't know, I just felt like she could have done one or the other to be more relevant. And TEDx ended up pulling her talk, not because of that, but because she was uncoachable and she talked about things that they say not to talk about. She mentioned God. No matter what our belief is, I mean, we just got to follow their rules when we're on their platform, or they will pull it. So I think that she tried to get a little too theme with it. And I think it just has to be real authentic, and we can be different. We just got to be careful, right? And Ellen, tell us a little bit more about that, what you're thinking.
So the poem is a spoken word poem, and the scene that it begins with is my mother mushing raw hamburger, and it unravels the 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 abuse, and it doesn't do it in a way that you begin to see the complexity between my mother and I, and it ends with me putting my finger. I say that there's a glass partition between us, and it sort of ends with me putting my finger up to the glass, and she puts her finger up to the glass. And there's a long story behind this because she suffered terribly with mental illness and my father was abusive. And for one moment, we reach each other, but then the pain comes back, and she leaves, and I am left with putting my finger back up to the glass, and I trace ILOVEU, Mom. And so it's about, because I want people to be able to feel what it felt like as a child without saying. So many people talk about, well, I went through abuse, da, 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 da. But in the end, I want to talk about how love and forgiveness is the key to us healing from whatever we've been through.
Yes. And that is, I like how you just defined that. And that will naturally unfold as you craft your story and your talk. I think if I were coaching you, let's say you sent me the talk, I would say, okay, let's make sure that we talk to the audience and say something in the beginning that's powerful, or in the middle, something that is a memory that you had of your mother, such as, let me give you an example. She always wore a yellow bracelet, and I remember the way that she smelled. Or you would perhaps even just notice, to this day, Chanel number 5 makes me sick to my stomach. I was in Target, and a woman passed by, and I smelled that familiar smell, and it took me back to childhood. And you would go through it, and then I would coach you to talk to the audience at some point about a bigger issue, right? To bring them into your issue. And that bigger issue is love. And I would encourage you to say something like, love is very complex. Yes. And love is intertwined with pain, so that even if someone hurts us, it doesn't erase that longing or abandonment or that desire for love. And we may not even understand how to forgive or what any of that means. But I'm here today to tell you my story. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, that's the kind of bridge sentence that will connect everyone and make them really care about your talk and your situation. And I love the idea of doing that. So we just defined really the perfect talk, what I consider the perfect talk. And one of our speakers, he had just gone through a divorce, but his talk wasn't really about divorce. It was called My Dog Skip. And he talked about how when he got divorced, he had nothing. And here he went from being two people in love in a house to sleeping on the floor, no air mattress even, of an apartment. And he was so lonely and depressed that he went to the shelter and got a dog. And this dog slept on this floor of this unfurnished apartment with him. And he talks about the love between him and my dog Skip. And if you think about it, you know, when he's talking about the talk isn't about the dog. And the talk isn't about divorce. The talk is about really that pain that connects any of us who have been through some sort of relationship break. And whether we were 16, 26, 46. So it's that pain that really connects everyone. So I'll always encourage you, as I read, edit, review talks, to make sure you're focusing on this one thread that kind of links it all together. And Bruce, you did that very well in your talk as well. And so we just want to make sure that we're giving you the complex secrets, because it's so much more than just delivering this presentation. It's almost the opposite. You know, I was coaching a professional athlete last week, and I told him that you're just too perfect. And it's like, oh my gosh, I got to know what you mean. I'm like, everything about your talk was too perfect. You look perfect. You talk perfect. You act perfect. You come across not robotic, but perfect. And it's very hard for people to relate to perfect. So we live in a much more real society and reality TV, Kardashian society. It's okay to make mistakes, right? We live in a Zoom society. So we really want authenticity. So I love the idea of a spoken word poem. You can be creative for sure. Just make sure you get feedback on your talk. And the next topic that we want to discuss in this course is, how long should your talk be? Because TEDx will give you a lot longer than I recommend. Even though you'll have up to 15, 16 minutes, my recommendation is to keep it short, powerful, and remember that the average consumer, we live in this Twitter atmosphere. If you can keep your talk to 11 or 12 minutes, that's ideal. And it's very, very hard to do that. You have to rehearse a lot. Bruce, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so just kind of tying it all together. I'll go back to, if I can, for a second, for the conversation with Ellen and starting, putting your audience, so telling the story of the pain or the challenge or the setback or all of that is really what I find. It's the real life aspect that folks can relate to, right? Yet we don't necessarily just want to hang there, because we want to talk about how we launched out of that, what we learned from it, what we can share, because you're going to get a common understanding with someone when you talk about a life experience. But where the real magic happens, I believe, is when you can bring your audience with you and say things like, and this is what I learned from that, or this is how I've grown from that. So the idea there is, if you, from a visual, I'm kind of an analogy guy. The divers in the Olympics, in the Summer Olympics, don't, on the springboard, they don't get any points for bending the board. To me, that's the tension, right? That's the stress. That's the issue. That's where they're creating the energy, one positive or negative, right? But that they don't get points for that. What they get the points for is when they come off of that bent board and do the twisting and the turning and the flipping and enter in the water as cleanly as they can. They spend time on the tension and the pressure and the challenge and all of that. But the real reward comes from when you can actually say, here's where I came from that. So just that's sort of my visual about it. From a talk length standpoint, you'll land on it. Mine, I think, was just at 14 minutes. I think it has to be enough that you can capture the audience. So you don't want to go too fast, but there's a time when you know you're done. In the software world, when I used to demonstrate software, so my job was to, talk about how a product worked, talk about its features, and talk about its benefits. What we often looked for when we were using our laptop to demonstrate that software was that critical moment when we've earned the right to what I call close the lid. You close the lid when your audience, your listener, you understand that they're with you. So when you get your listener with you, with the challenge, with what you learned, with what you challenge them to do, it's time to wrap. So yeah, 10 to 14 minutes, I think, is really a good amount of time and we'll talk more about structure and segments as we get forward, but that's what I would say, Tammy. Mine was 14, but I also think it's about how you take your audience from that grab to your experience, to what you learned, to what that challenge is that you want to offer them.
Yes, great feedback. Great feedback. And, when you're crafting that talk, so there is a period of time when you're not sure what you're going to talk about. And it's very ugly and very frustrating because you feel as if you just aren't sure which direction to go at that point. And I just want to tell you not to get frustrated because you'll go through several iterations. And I always coach people 100 to practice and present in front of the mirror 100 times. That was not a fun weekend when I did it myself, and all our speakers say the same thing. It's not fun. I was so mad. I was just so mad. I was in tears at the end of my first TED Talk. I was in tears because I was so mad. I could never get under my minute count. And then I always was stumbling over my words. And then I finally started drinking wine and I'm in the bathroom and then my husband's coming in and people are opening the door. By the time I did it 100 times, I was the worst person in the world, right, to be around. And so I would just strongly encourage you, you have to do the hard work. It's going to be ugly. You have to practice it 100 times. And you have to sit and watch over the course of 1 week, 100 TED Talks before that. And we'll get into that later on the third session of the course. But I really, really want you to get a PhD in TED, not to see who you want to be like, but to see who you don't want to be. Because you'll see TED Talks that will just immediately turn you off. And this is going to make you the best speaker on the planet because you'll see things that they did that were perhaps so rehearsed, or you'll see people be really disconnected. And I have a very important tip on this, but Bruce, I know you have a lot to say, so I want you to jump in. Yeah. And then I have a really important tip that I'll remember after this.
I've got a couple of words associated with the practice and the prep and getting from day one to the stage. And Tammy's right. From my experience, it was very challenging. But where the light switch tended, I'm not going to say flipped, but maybe the dimmer turned up a little bit, was I was really focused on me, like my story, my experience. And I was talking about the power of words. Man, you just have to understand that words are magical. And if you can put words in your life, I was thinking that's how my talk was going. Then I went, wait a minute. The light switch started to flip when I started to think about you, not me. So the content and the life experience is incredibly powerful, But and Tammy coached me on this, what is the message you want the folks in the seats and the folks on the other side of the camera, which could be 1 million people, 5 years from now, what is it that you want them to get? It's going to start with you because that's what you're familiar with. And in sales, we talk about stop selling your product and start selling the problem you solve. So I think there's something you can take from the selling aspect of presenting and saying, what issue are you trying to bring positive energy towards that can help impact 1 million people? So Ellen, it might be around, your message specifically, but how does that then relate to someone that you are going to touch? And the third thing I'd say, Tammy, then I'll turn it back over to you, is that if you impact one person in your talk, count that as like home run, grand slam, Super Bowl win, one person. Because if you impact one person, then that ripple impact, that ripple effect will happen outside of anything that you will control, and it'll be incredibly positive.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to say is it's all about legacy. It is all about legacy. So what is your legacy? I was talking with a famous golfer who had won just about every championship and really, number one in the world golfer. And he said something about how ESPN doesn't show me anymore. They blackballed me. And I said, your legacy is not golf. Golf is simply a sport that you played to earn money. That's not your legacy. And his eyes just opened. He said, oh, my legacy is the orphans, because he was an orphan. He didn't have shoes until he was 12. And he ended up giving his first win as a golfer, a brand new Mercedes, to an orphanage. And then he started an orphanage. And you don't have to start an orphanage, but your legacy is not what you do, right? And so I wanted to talk about the power of legacy, because I promise if you think too commercial, then it's just going to come across as real commercial. We had a lot of commercial auditions, such as one guy, very famous, owns gyms all across the world. And our rule was, please do not submit anything that looks like a sales type video for audition. And he literally had his assistant submit a commercial, a trailer for TEDx. And it was all about his gyms, with him standing in front of the gym and the sign in the background. And it wasn't a TED Talk. He really actually just thought that somebody was going to say, oh gosh, this guy's successful and makes millions of dollars, and we want him to do a TED Talk. But words are currency. And when you deliver that talk, you could be talking to someone in the Ukraine, and that's all they have is their cell phone tonight. And everything you're saying makes a difference. There's somebody on here, Mark, I hate to call you out, Mark, but there's someone on here in this course right now who has one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard. And that's the thing, is you talk about your story, talk about your legacy. If you think that you're not sure, you want to go between one or two topics, get clarity, right? Flesh them out and do what you think is more natural. It's a very fine balance, but Mark served, and he served in the military. And if he delivered his talk and really a personal moment that he shared, he could really save and change lives.
Absolutely.
And, when I say it's a really fine balance, what do I mean by that? Well, one really critical thing that I just want you guys to know. So I was watching a TEDx talk being delivered once. I can't say who the speaker was, but This was a very successful woman who owns a multi-million-dollar company, and she got on the TEDx stage. Instead of doing a talk that was about legacy or about her company or something that would impact the world, she tried to be funny. She did a TED talk that was kind of all laughs, and it was, I really can't even say what it was about because it was so crude that, like, she mentioned a woman's body part at least 3 times during the talk. She was talking about online dating, but she was trying to be funny. So her entire talk was about women's body parts, and she would say a lot of very crude things. And at the end of it, I felt like, gosh, here you are, you have the opportunity to have your talk reach millions of people. After I'm dead, after you're dead, your talk is going to circulate all around the world. I mean, look at Kobe, look at anybody that didn't know that their time was short on earth, and you have the power to impact lives, and you're talking about sex and body parts and, like, things I can't even say here in this course. Okay. And I just thought it was a missed opportunity. Now, I know I'm telling everybody, don't be commercial, but if she would have delivered one talk, so she owns a multi-million-dollar social media company. If she would have delivered a TED talk about social media and the power of what you deliver, or perhaps if she would have delivered a talk about bullying and used an example even of somebody that committed suicide from social media bullying. There's so many examples of high school students. There's so many examples of people that are bullied on social media that became big national cases. If she would have used her platform for something like that, she would have had a talk that really was relevant and also supported her business, right? Now, either way, she was just trying to be a comedian and it really didn't work, but she did a talk on something that had no point really. So while you don't have to be Mother Teresa or, Jesus, you literally should think, is this talk going to impact lives? If the answer is no, then you should go to be a comedian on stage and not audition for a TED talk, because TED really is going to go viral and going to be something very powerful. Bruce, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, and we talked a little bit about this in an earlier session where we talked about focusing on identifying your why. Why is it that this message and this story is so important to you? What impact? And legacy, we talk a lot about legacy isn't what you do. Legacy is who you are. So as we think about the legacy that we want to leave, the message of the why is this important? Why am I so compelled to share this? And it took me a while, and took me some coaching, because I had to step into that it mattered, right? Does my story really matter? And just by thinking through it and having some time by myself to say, wow, if I can share the positive power of our mindset with one person, it's not about how I do this. It's not about what the little gift or the skill is that I was given. And I wasn't talking about my book, but it was more about how much impact has this had on me, and how can I structure it in a way that can be absorbed by others. So that's really kind of where I see that, Tammy, is the legacy part is, it doesn't have to be a do-gooder kind of thing. It can be a challenging and very difficult topic. But at the end of the day, the idea we're sharing is, in the TED concept, is what can I do with this message that will advance the game, that will improve the world, that will touch one person, and spend some time with that. I mean, I hope that we're getting there, but there's always the refinement. To me, we always kind of we're always whittling the story. We're always whittling the message so we can have the greatest possible impact. And if I could do my TED again, There are probably some things I would do differently because of what I've learned since then. But I would also say, and Tammy, I think you would agree with this, focus on doing the best, not perfect. Perfect isn't, like you said, that person who's too polished or too
Yes.
sort of rehearsed. No, it's got to have some pain. It's got to have some struggle. It's got to have some, a conversation with yourself that you might just be letting the audience into a little bit. I know I had to do that a bit. So those are my thoughts there, Tammy, on that aspect.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is kind of different because we only have 15 minutes, but I know that we will definitely we'll reach out to each one of you about one-on-one time and what stage you're at. But I really would like to open up the mic for questions to see if anybody has a question, you can drop it in chat. But Bruce, can you unmic them so that they can ask questions if they would like to?
Yeah, or anyone can also, I've got the feature on that folks can unmute themselves as well, Tammy. So I'm just kind of going along, asked to unmute, and it looks like, well, we got all kinds of hands up. So ladies first,
Mark?
Terry, you want to go first and then we'll go to Mark?
Yes.
How do you
Hey.
not
one
be
direction,
bored?
and you're like, no direction, but it's kind of like, oh, I need to give you something. Gold stars. Wow.
Well, let's see. Is that Mark? Go ahead. What's your question, Mark?
My question was, how do you not be boring? How do you prevent being boring?
Well, I can answer that. You're not going to be boring because you're here and there's nobody in this group that's boring. You're not going to be boring. That is a great question though, because at the heart of it is a lot of false information is out there about speaking. People tell you to be funny. People tell you to add something interesting. We had a speaker bring a teddy bear on stage, right? And it actually worked really well. We had a speaker bring a live dog on stage, but it actually worked really well because it made sense. But how do you not be boring? I don't think you need to have a prop. I wanted a prop in my talk. I had a human brain all ready to talk about neuroscience, and there was a brain in a jar. And at the end, I decided that's just too much, right? It was just a prop. So I would say, don't worry about being boring. You're not going to be boring at all. And you don't even want to be concerned with presentation skills or anything like that. Just be you. You're definitely not going to be boring.
Everyone can go on mute when you're not chatting. That'd be great. And then raise your hand and we'll bring folks on. That'd be great.
And Bruce, can you answer a little bit? Maybe you can mute everybody, Bruce, because you can do that as the host command control. But can you talk a little bit about boring, and then we'll answer another question.
So as many of you know me, Bruce is one of the wordiest guys on the planet. I can use more words to try to describe something, and I can just tell when the eyes get glossed over. So I would err on the side of simplicity. Folks are going to understand your message without over explaining the detail. I mean, you can say something in common like, when you get on that bus and people are going to go, yeah, you don't have to say, there's two seats on either side and 12 rows back. You can just describe something and sort of leave a little bit there. So I have a tendency to over explain, kind of like I'm doing now, but I would say, build a story that is going to have some relatability. Folks can relate to it, so you can simplify. There's a famous jazz artist who used to say, the fewer notes you play, more each one is worth. So just think about simplicity, and less is more. And that's going to create the image for your audience to build as you tell your story. That'd be my advice on that. Hope that helps.
Yes. And no If you can avoid PowerPoint slides, avoid PowerPoint slides. You don't need them.
Okay. Next question. Terry. Go ahead, Terry. What do you got?
Nothing. I just want everybody to smile so I can take the photo.
Oh, okay. We'll smile. Okay. Hold on.
Okay.
Mark, you're not
Everybody's-
smiling.
Everybody say he is. I can see the smile. You guys ready?
Yes. All
I
right.
think that's good.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
A
Awesome.
couple more hands go up.
Ephraim.
Ephraim, what you got?
I just want to ask, when on stage, is there a clock on the back of the wall somewhere
Yeah,
to let you know that that you had 10 minutes, that you had 12 minutes?
well, with ours, yes. So you think about that monitor. If you're a musician, you see that monitor.
Okay, I got it.
So there's something on front that starts counting down.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think 18's the top, or maybe it starts at 0. I think they can vary, but yes, there is. And that's, by the time you've practiced yours enough times, you would practice it with a clock. So that's not going to distract you. That's going to be like, okay, yeah, that's out there. I'm used to it.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There should be a clock. And I want to add also that when you audition, it's kind of like finding your groove. Like right here, we've got this great family of all of us, and every single one of you are amazing humans, or you wouldn't be here talking about what we're talking about. And because you wouldn't care about delivering a TED Talk and changing lives, which is what it's all about. And when you audition, no matter who you end up auditioning with, because sometimes people do multiple auditions at different places, and we'll get to that next time. But if somebody doesn't choose you, that may just be because they don't have the same mission or goal, right? There's a whole lot of different belief systems out there. As you know, you could just log on to Facebook and see that. So, I always encourage people to make sure that you just do the talk that you're destined for, because it's the same way with all kinds of speaking. It's the same way with a book. It's the same way with everything. You have to tell your story. There's somebody that needs to hear your story, and that's your legacy. And, last night I was coaching somebody who was a sex trafficking victim, and this underground group had gotten her out of an abusive relationship with somebody in the Middle East, and she had a child, and, it was really complex. But that's her story, and it's really powerful and specific, but not everybody will like it, and that's okay. So just focus on perfecting your story, because it will change lives.
Yeah, great point. Thanks, Tammy.